Hello and welcome to the Kaizen Show, where we explore the little things that create the big things. I'm Coach Macka, the founder and head coach at Kaizen Triathlon Academy. On today's show, we have Jimmy Whelan, a former professional cyclist turned professional triathlete. Jimmy, welcome to the Kaizen Show.
Good morning, Macka. Thanks for having me on. Yeah.
So I certainly want to get into the weekend where you debuted at 70.3 Ironman Geelong. But first, what makes you change when you're at a pinnacle of one sport to move to another?
Yeah, good question. A lot of people were surprised by the change, almost myself included. If someone had have told me, 2 years ago that I would kind of voluntarily change career paths or like sports anyway, to change codes, I would have been pretty surprised. But at the same time, given the context of some of the crashes and just in general how my career was going over the last 3 years, it kind of made sense. Like I had some success in road cycling, and I could have kept going to a certain level, but yeah, there was just part of me that wanted to move on from a sport where I had some serious safety concerns, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And also I had the challenge of positioning too. So those two factors in itself make it pretty difficult to perform at the top level in Europe. So, and lots of people always said that I could be good at triathlon, and so there's only one way to find out, and that was to make the swap.
Yeah.
And here I am.
So for those of us who don't know Jimmy Whelan, those who do a little quick Google search, this is kind of the things, kind of highlights we might see. So one under-23 Tour of Flanders. You can correct me if I'm wrong with any of these.
Yep.
One under-23 Oceania Road Champs. Rode for Grand Tour Team EF, which is TF Education right now. Yes? I think that's
EF Pro Cycling.
rode in the Giro d'Italia.
Yep.
So for those who don't know, that's one of the three Grand Tour events that happen around the world. I saw that one of your efforts at the Nationals was around 7.5 watts per kilo, which is after riding 5,000 kilojoules throughout the day. Can you give us a bit of explanation around that as well?
Yeah, I've always had a pretty good day at the Australian Road Nationals.
Yeah.
I was always a bit of a menace on that course, and I managed to find myself my best result was second.
Yeah.
Getting caught by Luke Blapp on the last lap, which was devastating, but still, that day I had a really good ride. Did some pretty crazy numbers that day.
Yeah.
And with the nature of the course, you have a pretty aggressive climb, and so if you're really fit, you can really do a pretty nice power graph.
Yeah.
It's like 7 minutes, 6 minutes, all out. And because I was so fit, I could do almost a PB power after 5,000 kJs.
Impressive.
Which is kind of standard in pro cycling.
Yeah.
It's not really anything amazing. It's just the norm.
Okay. Also, winner of the Santos Tour of Cycling Festival. So these are some of the highlights of those who don't know Jimmy Whelan see and might go, that's success. But what to you has been the highlights and success for you during your time as a professional cyclist?
Probably my biggest achievement was, I came into the world tour really fast. I basically went from racing locally in Australia to being in the world tour in under 2 years. And then I was the world tour for 4 years. And then I found myself actually without a contract for 2 years, racing at a lower level. And my biggest achievement by far was actually winning in Portugal 2 years ago, winning the Queen stage of the Volta Portugal. And that got me back into the big pro ranks, which got me back into the pro tour last year. So that, I think, if I was to put it down, my biggest personal and also professional achievement was probably winning in Portugal 2 years ago, which enabled me to go from without a pro contract for 2 years and then to go back. Like not many people have actually done that. So that's my proudest achievement.
Yeah.
I've got the trophy cabinet at home, and that day I won like this tile, this really cool kind of trophy, and that's like my my prized possession. So yeah.
Which is always, I find interesting when you talk to people and you can see those sorts of stats, and then it's like, well, is that actually the highlight for that person? Because things can often be different from what we see in the reality for that person. Particularly even like as you talked about before, the crashes, which doesn't get highlighted there, but having to come back from, I think you had 2 major crashes in 1 year, having to keep coming back from those sorts of events are certainly challenging.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say I was unlucky having these crashes. Like if you watch professional road cycling these days, it's just part of the game. You have to get used to crashing 3 to 4 times a year, and maybe you get unlucky and you do break your pelvis or your back. I mean, these athletes who are racing at the top level, their ability to bounce back from pretty serious injuries and be racing within 6 weeks is crazy.
Yeah.
And they actually don't get enough kudos for their return.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I could talk about that for a while, but
yeah, which I would at some point would certainly love to have that chat with you about. But talking about safety is something that I would like to talk to you about, because I don't like to see the battle that we do have on the roads between cyclists and road users, and not a matter of right and wrong. But just looking at safety for a quick moment, is there something that you think that we can do to help make sure that cyclists are safe, whether it's as a professional cyclist or the general road user?
Yeah, I guess just before the safety concerns was strictly talking about racing, but then there is also the real life safety concerns, and particularly here in Australia. So I spend a lot of time in Barcelona, which is a super busy city, and I'm never worried for my safety there. And there's way more cars, there's way more happening, yet I feel safe on the roads. But here in Australia, I go on a quiet leafy street in the suburbs, and I'm actually more worried about my safety. I don't really know the answer, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's people are busier here, they're more stressed. It's a cultural problem.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know the answer. And every time I come back to Australia and I leave Australia, and I haven't had any problems.
Yeah.
Touch wood. There's no wood here, but yeah, like I consider myself lucky to be safe.
Yeah, I definitely. There's obviously infrastructure, and there's probably the main thing I think is just culture. I think we have unfortunately a culture where we don't recognise cyclists as also human beings that want to get home to their families, and I think we probably need those who have the power, whether it's media or whatever else, to get involved to hopefully help us be recognised as also people that just want to get home safe to our families. Just wanting to go back to young Jimmy before he was a professional cyclist, because I certainly know that you're a runner, and this is probably part of what helped your transition into being a professional triathlete. But when did you start to have the belief in yourself that, yes, I could make it as a professional cyclist and compete against the best in the world?
Yeah. I mean, when I was 18, I hadn't even started riding a bike. I was a runner at the time, which we actually ran together every now and again.
Yeah.
At the old Zavarians.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I didn't really start riding until I was 20, 21, when I got injured as a runner. And when I got injured as a runner, I thought it was the end of the world. I thought I'd lost my identity. And then I started riding because I needed to keep the endorphins going. And then I started racing locally in Melbourne, and then someone said, like, you're really good for how much riding you've done. And then I started beating guys who were top-level Australian riders. And yeah, I just had people coming into my, just saying things, being like, you've got the talent to go pro if you want. This is how you could do it. And then I just started winning stuff in Australia, and then I realized it almost fell on my lap. I didn't even think about going pro. I was just racing locally, and then opportunities came up at a national level. Then all of a sudden I came second in the under-23 road race in the Australian Championships, and that allowed me to go race in Europe for the Australian team.
Which is a very quick turnaround, because a lot of cyclists probably have started riding when they're 4 or 5 years of age and done junior ranks for racing, and then developed through those years, where you've obviously started riding at 18 years of age and then become a professional quite quickly.
Yeah. I didn't realize what I achieved in that short period of time, and almost didn't appreciate it either, because it just happened so quickly. And yeah, it feels like only 3 years ago that I started road cycling. It doesn't really feel like that long ago.
Yeah.
Life's kind of on fast forward in that life. Yeah.
Yeah. Just sort of riding the wave though.
Yeah.
I also noticed recently you ran a sub 30-minute 10K, which sort of, I guess, helps you know that you can certainly run. But there's certainly a difference between running and running off the bike. We will now transition to the race on the weekend at Geelong, where you did the first time you having to run a half marathon off a 90k bike. How was that change from being a straight runner to having to actually run off the bike?
Yeah, I mean, a bit of context for everyone else too. Like, yes, on Sunday I raced in the pro category in the pro series race, and it was my second ever triathlon. So that's why these questions are kind of relevant, because I haven't done this situation very many times. And yeah, as you said, like I can run pretty quick 10k. I think I did 29:55,
55 here and there, yep.
and then I did a half marathon in February in Barcelona, and I went through 18k at 3-minute Ks. So like that was pretty cool. But
yeah.
I had to pull out because of Achilles injury, but we don't need to talk about that. It was just 20. And then
But you bounced back again quite quickly.
It was just an Achilles. Like it wasn't a proper injury, but it was like a pretty serious tightness that if I kept running, I would have done something bad.
Yeah.
So I only needed to take 5 days off after the half marathon, and I was back to normal training. So
which a lot of people struggle with. So when you're that fit and you feel like, okay, every day is another day that I'm going to be losing fitness. Psychologically, this is what you're thinking. And you've got a race coming up. I'm going to be debuting at Geelong. To stay calm and go, okay, I'm just going to manage this, and then the rest will unfold. It can be certainly challenging, even for age groupers who are constantly having to worry about, okay, I'm going to get sick, I'm going to have this little niggle, and having to manage that, and then go, okay, we're still good to go for my debut.
Yeah, I mean that race, even though I didn't finish, it showed that I was really fit and my run standard was super high. So actually taking 5 days off the run, I wasn't too worried because I was already at the level, and I needed to focus on my swimming and riding anyway. So it was actually good.
Yeah.
I mean, almost if I look back at it, a proper running injury is probably a blessing in disguise, because it means that I'll go to the pool more.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, running like this. So yeah, on Sunday it was the first time where I've really done, 2 hours quite hard on the bike, in position on the TT position, and yeah, having 1 minute in transition and then going straight into a half marathon. So I didn't really know what to expect. So I didn't know what would happen to my legs. Maybe, like, there's plenty of guys that are amazing riders and amazing runners, and you put them two and two together, and they shuffle in the run.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the case of Sunday, I just said, okay, for the first 10k, like, go easier than what you think you can do. And so in my case, I did 3:25s.
Yep.
And then I said, I don't really know what's going to happen to my legs. I'm better off staying safe, and then in the last 3k after the turnaround, you can go as fast as you want, but until then, just keep steady. Because I did notice if I tried to do like 3:10s, the engine lights started to flicker a little bit. And yeah, that's as much a reflection on just me going really hard on the bike, because I was completely solo.
Which is certainly a tough way to do. There's a difference between being an age grouper where you are essentially time trialing throughout the event. When you're having to be a professional and there's tactics going on, and even though it's a non-drafting event, there's still groups that are surrounded, and mentally being around other athletes and pacing each other and getting yourself through the bike together is certainly a different feel for an event compared to yourself who's having to come out of the water. We're not going to say too much how much time you had behind, but there was a significant amount of time that you had to make up. Yeah. So maybe we can discuss, one, how you psychologically bring yourself into a race when you're that far back to still be competitive, and then two, we'll then get into how do you now move forward to improving the swim so you are closer for your future races.
Yeah, I mean, the way the bike went is basically because of my swim. So I can talk about the swim a little bit. Like I'm a beginner level swimmer. And when I first started swimming in October, November, I was swimming my 100 meters at 2-minute pace. And now on the weekend, I did 1:30s, which if you compare that to the pro field, it looked like I was a terrible swimmer, which relative to them, I am.
The rate of improvement that is massive.
But the rate of improvement is actually quite good. So I've also got to realize that, and not compare myself to the time gap to the pros.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just say it, I was almost 8 minutes behind the front guys. Mm-hmm. So they swam at 1:08s.
Yeah.
And so 8 minutes is a long time.
Yeah.
And so I came out of T1 days behind the boys. And obviously I'm a former pro bike rider, so I was like, okay, I can catch up. Like if I just put my head down, I have a good day on the bike, I can turn that 8 minutes into 4 minutes, and then in the run, if I have a really good run, I can then maybe be back in the race and finish like 10th or something, which almost happened. But when I saw how big the group was at one of the turnaround points, and I was by myself,
Yeah.
like essentially the race was in three parts. There was me by myself, another really big group, and then another really big group. So there was about 22 guys, 23 guys in the front pack, all perfectly together, almost looking like a bunch ride. And so when I was by myself putting power out, like good power too, I was on a good day. And then I thought, yeah, I'm on one here. I'm gonna mow these guys down. And then I looked up the road and I saw the pack, and I was like, oh, they're like, the world champ sitting in 10th right now, and he's probably doing 60 watts less for the same speed.
Yeah.
And I was,
Because this is one of the strongest fields I've seen at Geelong. So taking on the caliber of the athletes that were there is certainly, I would have looked at the start list and be shitting myself.
no, like for people that understood the whole context of everything, like there was lots of people at that swim start.
Yeah.
Really curious to see how it would go.
Yeah.
Just purely from a sporting entertainment side of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I, made this grand plan to become a triathlete, my debut race was always going to be Geelong. And I made this announcement in November, and I said that I wanted to win the race. Now,
Big call.
I didn't know that there was going to be 12 Olympians on the start line.
Yeah.
A world champion, ITU world champions, and then me.
That could possibly be our strongest field we've had in Oceania, I feel.
People say that, I was listening to Yellow Gene's podcast with Aaron Royal yesterday.
Yeah.
And they were saying the stats that they did yesterday with the swim, the ride, and the run was the same as the world champs.
Yeah.
Arguably actually faster. So that made me feel a lot better about myself.
Good. Good.
So yeah, the bike power was the same, and Yellow ran faster.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he ran 3:33, and I ran the overall time he did 3:33.
Yeah.
And I did 3:46.
We still have one of the strongest bike run combinations of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did the same time, so I did a pretty similar time to the front group, but my watts would have been 40 to 50 more.
Yeah.
And so then also my run isn't really reflective because I've gone so hard on the bike compared to them.
Yeah.
But I still did a good run. I averaged 3:24s.
Yeah.
And yeah, what was that? 71 minutes.
Yeah.
I would have really liked to go under 70, and now that I look back on it, I probably should have gone harder in the run because I actually felt fine at the end. Well, not fine. I was still pretty tired. But
yeah.
I was looking around me and everyone else was on their hands and knees. Some people in the medical tent, and I was just walking away.
Yeah.
Feeling good.
So they're feeling it more today.
but yeah, today and yesterday, my God, I feel like I've, as I said, had a massive weekend bender.
Fortunately, not a multi-stage event where you have to back it up day after day.
Yeah.
So just having a little think on what possible little things contribute to that big thing. Also moving forward to what is the big picture for you. So whether it's T100, whether it's 70.3 World Champs, if you have a think over the days, weeks and months that can contribute to these big events, what do you see as the little things that do impact you and contributing to your success? I feel like one of those things is rice. You're definitely a big fan of that.
Yeah, my whole rice thing, I would always take photos of rice when I was cycling.
Yeah.
Pre-race, just kind of as a joke.
Yeah.
And so I've continued that branding.
Yeah.
Into the triathlon world. Yeah. Whenever I take a photo of a rice, people always find it funny, so I've just kept it going.
Yeah. Nice.
But
so outside of rice, what do we contribute to the success of Jimmy Whelan?
Just in general, or
in general, it can be your family, it can be your partner, it can be you meditate, anything that you find that contributes that most people may not think of, but you find regularly helps you to be able to perform.
I don't know if there's any secret sauce, or unfortunately, people like the secret sauce. Carbs. Yeah. I don't know. Just when I was a high school runner, I got good pretty quick, just from hard work and kind of living a pretty simple lifestyle, like a boring lifestyle where I just focus on training, which is not sustainable all year round. But every now and again, I call it like training camp mode, where like a lot of people will benefit from going to an altitude camp because they're up on a mountain without any distractions. And so essentially I apply that at home and just focus on my training, recovery. And I think that's one of my strengths. So yeah, just, I guess, like a lot of people would observe me from a cyclist and now to triathlon and see that like I'm very professional, not over the top professional. Like I've seen all types of professional habits and training routines from pro cyclists. And there's like, I'm definitely not the most dialed, but I think I've found a good balance with my lifestyle and being able to be a professional athlete, whether that be like a high level school runner, or a professional cyclist and now triathlete. Like essentially the stuff that, like the mindset that I took to try and win my local school competitions in year 12 is a very similar mindset to what I take now. And I think that's, that's probably the reason for my success. And just the consistency. Like I don't have moments where, I need to take a month off. If you look at my Strava, there's some pretty consistent graphs.
Yeah.
All my training's public, by the way, so you can check it out.
It's public, and for those who are on Strava, they'll definitely know your name because you've normally got all the KOMs for those around, particularly in Melbourne. Is that something that also there are a few people who do like to chase KOMs? Is that something you actually try to do as part of your, like, throw in there as part of training, just something fun, or is?
Yeah, I mean, my greatest achievement last year was taking the Hellride Strava KOM.
Right, yeah.
Which is a nice feeling because I'm a climber.
Yeah.
So like I'm kind of on territory that I shouldn't own, but here I am taking the Strava. So, but yeah, I do if I'm in really good bike form, I do take the opportunity to try and take a Strava. But these days the Stravas are so hard to take in Melbourne. You need to have the right conditions.
Yes.
So
There's watching you from somewhat a distance. I actually think of another athlete that has I feel like a similar approach, Oscar Piastri. Both confident, but also very level-headed, which I feel there's a big similarity there, and professional through and through. Do you feel like, how do you manage when you're achieving more and more and becoming a professional cyclist and now a professional triathlete? How do you stay confident without building ego? There's some that obviously yeah.
No, it's a good point. And actually that's probably one of my biggest strengths is like having a overly strong sense of belief. So like fake it till you make it almost. Like in even when I came across into road cycling, I actually thought, okay, I could potentially win this race and go world tour. People thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
So when I went to Belgium for the first time, people said that was such a waste of money to fly to Belgium because I'd never raced there before and I didn't have the skills. And then I won that race and went pro from that race. And then also when I dropped out of the world tour, like if you look at the statistics to try and get back to the pro tour or the world tour after getting like delisted, I guess you call it, is really difficult. It's kind of like an AFL player dropping down to the VFL and then going back up.
Yeah.
But I would say it's way harder.
Yeah, well, the players in the VFL have still got the support of the team.
Yeah.
They've got everything they need to help guide them back into the professional ranks, where, again, I was a professional cyclist, so I don't know. But my understanding is basically once you're dropped out of the top teams, then you're having to do everything on your own to try and be seen again as worthy of one of those spots.
Yeah, you're completely isolated. And the only person who believes in you is yourself, which is pretty savage, to be honest. And that's why when you see these guys, they get dropped from the world tour, whether that's from a crash or a bad season, and then they grind for 3 years and get back. Like that is so crazy, and like doesn't get enough respect, to be honest. But yeah, like this, going back to what we're talking about, like even in this triathlon, with this transition to triathlon, like I'm taking that self-belief, and like that's why so many people are interested, because I've kind of been public about me wanting to say I want to do really well, which often not many athletes do. And I think more athletes need to do it. And I just know, based off previous history, that if I put the training in, I have a good routine, consistency, and I do apply my my habits to a new game, that I could be good.
Yeah.
And if you say it publicly, then you kind of have a commitment to do it.
Yeah. So moving now from what was your debut, what does the future success look like for Jimmy?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about the weekend and how I feel about it, because obviously I wasn't at the front of the race, which is hard for me to accept. But it's just the reality of my swim. And that's that was always going to be the case.
So what are you doing currently to moving from 2 minutes per 100 to 130 is a massive improvement, but there's obviously a lot of room to go. And now as you get more towards trying to swim 110 per 100, those incremental improvements are harder and harder to get. So what are you doing to make that improvement?
Yeah, I need to increase my swim volume, that's for sure. I've been doing a lot of running, and a bit of riding, and probably not enough swimming. And yeah, I was on my on weeks with the swimming, I was only swimming 10K a week, and running 130K a week.
Yeah.
I probably should swap that priority around.
130K a week is
a lot.
Is a lot of if you're swimming that'd be
and
a lot, but yeah, certainly needs to bump up that swimming. But
yeah, I mean, on Sunday, I was kind of going in thinking, okay, I'll be able to hold the feet of the slowest person, because you kind of get a little bit of a draft.
Yeah.
But 200 meters in, I couldn't hold the feet of the slowest person, and so that was that was the rude shock that I needed to see, being okay, you need to rethink your training structure and actually just do a big swim block if you want to do anything in this sport, because it doesn't matter how strong of a bike rider I am, or how fast of a runner. So yesterday, if I wanted to win the race on Sunday, I would have had to have run the half marathon world record.
yeah.
57:40, which was bang on Kiplimo's pace.
It's a big
so
ask.
It's doable.
That's the reason why you're running 130K a week.
A human has done it.
Yeah.
But not after a swim and a bike.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've really just got to commit to the swim and join a proper squad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm in the process of actually sorting that.
We can come down to some of the Kaizen swims if you like, and
well, I leave in 3 weeks to go overseas.
We can get a lot done in 3 weeks. Yeah. And are you doing some work with Brenton of Ever Swimming? So one of our other partners, doing some work with him.
Yeah. Shout out to Brenton. I saw him in December.
Yeah.
Went down to Geelong and did a bit of a swim technique. And he said that my swim technique was solid.
Yeah.
But for example, on Sunday, I feel efficient in the water, but I feel like I've only got one gear. So when these guys went out really hard to the first buoy, which was 800 meters, I feel like mechanically I can't produce enough power. I feel like I can just sit at zone 3, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I haven't done enough fast swimming, and I found that I was doing big bike sessions and big run sessions and going to the pool for recovery.
And managing lactate in the upper body, definitely a different feeling to dealing with that throughout the legs, which is what you're used to.
Completely different.
Yeah.
I remember the first hard swim I did. I'd never had an upper body pump, ever. Yeah. I came out of the swim feeling like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Now Jimmy's got the pump going on.
And then I looked in the mirror and I'm like, I'm definitely not. But it was a bizarre feeling just to have all this blood in my upper body.
Yeah.
It was actually so strange.
Yeah.
My brain was like, what are you doing? What is this? Yeah.
We're leveling up. That's what we're doing.
And if you look at it, it doesn't look like I've put on much size. But if you look at a photo of me from last year, racing in the early season cycling races when I was 62 kilo, I'm now 67 kilo. And a lot of that is actually in my arms and lats. If the average person looked at me right now, they'd be like, this guy's not big, but compared to what I was, I feel like I've put on a bit of size, and that's from the swimming.
And do you notice that at all while on the bike or running? Change in size?
Not really. Not on the bike.
No.
But in the run, a little bit.
Okay.
Like when I'm doing fast 400s, maybe I don't feel as like feathery, light on my feet.
Okay.
But if I'm just running at threshold, I don't notice. I know a lot of guys say that when they are swim fit, they also run fit from a threshold perspective, which makes sense because it's a full aerobic activity with like and it's quite like heavy lactate base.
So what does the rest of the year look like for you?
Yeah, well, my main priority was just to do the race on Sunday and see how it would go. And so after Sunday, I actually emailed Ironman and asked for the start at Valencia, which is at the end of April, 27th of April.
Yeah.
So
Did they get back to you?
yes.
Yeah, good, good.
And yeah, just bit by bit. Now I'll go to Europe in 3 weeks and race in Europe. I don't have a fully structured program as such. I'm kind of doing things in 3-month blocks. And my ultimate goal for the season, and what I told a lot of people, is to try and qualify for the World Championships in Marbella. Now, Geelong was definitely not the race to do that because of the stack field.
But it gives you an insight to what that actual race is going to be like.
Well, essentially that race, like hearing Aaron Royal and Yalagains talk about the standard of that race, like I think that's the standard of what more or less what a World Championships could feel like. I mean that it's going to be a more stacked field, but it's kind of gives you an idea.
Yeah.
And so it's good to see firsthand. The standard.
And this is also not what I would find a lot of debuting professionals would choose to do, is to compete against a world-class field. Normally you try and find a race which is more of a tiptoeing into a race to go, okay, I'm racing professional, but you're not getting absolutely flogged. It's certainly a different way to do it. So to have that confidence of going, I'm going to compete against the best. I want to compete against the best at 70.3 Worlds. This is what it's going to be like, and I'll know the improvement that I need to make between now and then. Yeah,
it took a bit of cojones.
Give me the big cojones.
Like a lot of guys are like, you picked this race as your first one. I'm like, well, when I picked it, I didn't know the start list.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, a lot of people after the race, they came up to me and they said like, or just messages on Instagram just saying like, kudos for having the courage to be so public about wanting to do well in your first pro race and also go to a pro series race with a start list like this.
Yeah.
Like most people would say, have you thought about not doing this race? I'm like, I'm not doing it. I said I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And also, like my friends and family could come and watch and kind of get around it and kind of see the new thing that I'm doing because they haven't seen it before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were, when I came out of the water, I saw my friends and family and normally I get like a lot of encouragement but they felt a bit sorry for me, which was kind of a bit of a weird feeling.
Which for me has to be one of those little things that do have a big impact. Even though it's an individual sport, the team that you have around you, in this case being your family, being there now to see you race, because I'm assuming they weren't able to be there at all your races traveling around Europe because it can be quite a difficult thing. No. But to have them there on your debut in Geelong would have been certainly a nice feeling, even though you're coming out 8 minutes behind.
Yeah, no, it was nice. And then they also enjoyed over that 3-hour period seeing me slowly mow people down, which was also satisfying. Yeah, because I didn't know if it was going to happen because I was so far back. Yeah, like it was nice in that run, just to chuck it into a decent gear and chase down a lot of guys. That was quite satisfying. Just knowing that I was at 1.9 minutes behind, which would have been like 4K, 5K behind them at one point in the race.
For me, one of the big things, obviously, to perform is the psychology, and to be that far back out of the water, you definitely need to be strong-minded and have a belief in yourself and what you're capable of, and also letting go of that comparison, because it can be very easily soul-destroying of going, I want to be able to compete against the best, and they're already way up the road and they're in the pack, and to be able to have that belief of going, I'm going to do what I need to do to get the most out of myself to perform today, and keep reframing to be able to go, okay, this is the time gap. I'll just work towards it. I'll focus on this bit now, and we'll see what unfolds.
Yeah, it was really difficult. I've never felt like coming out of the water, I've never felt that in sport before. To be like so exposed in front of my family and friends, and also everyone watching.
Yeah.
And just to come out of the water, like the lead women's race, which was 5 minutes, started 5 minutes behind. The lead 5 women passed me in the swim, and so I was through T1 with the women. I don't know if that's ever happened in a pro Ironman before, but
I know of some athletes who have experienced a similar thing, but
yeah, like more to it. Like it was just like it takes, like if you don't keep a calm head, instantly your legs lock up.
Yeah.
So like if I got overwhelmed in that moment, I would have gotten onto the bike and had a terrible ride, and would have lost 10 more minutes compared to the front group, and then never have caught anyone, which could have easily happened. Like I was speaking to my old man who's watched a lot of this. He knows a lot about cycling and sport in general, now triathlon, and he said like it was pretty cool. He's never seen me in a situation where I was so far behind in a sporting event, and then to have the acceptance of the situation, and then also just say, okay, I have 3 hours to fix this. Things could happen in the race where I do end up getting back in the race, or at the very least I'll catch people in the run. But to keep a calm head was difficult, but yeah.
And you're all on your own. Like in a cycling event, you have got other riders who can help contribute. You've got the motorcade of vehicles that can sort of help work towards back up towards the pack. With triathlon, your head's in the water. You know that the people are ahead of you, but you don't know how big that gap is getting. And when you are getting passed by the next wave, which is the professional females, it can very easily turn into a spiral. So you certainly need to be able to keep that level head and stay calm.
Yeah, and I guess from cycling, I've kind of learnt to deal with, any road cyclist, like a bit of challenge. Like there's some days in the Grand Tour and in judo where if you're on a bad day and it's a 220k stage and you got 5 mountains to climb, and maybe it's a half an hour uphill start and you have bad legs, and you're out the back in the first 10 minutes, and you think, I'm not going to make time cut today, and the race is just going away from you. That happened to me one day, and I'm a climber, and so I should be good at that terrain. And it was a similar kind of feeling, but at the same time you're still with other people who are also experiencing the same bad performance, and then you also have a radio where you have someone telling you, okay, just keep going, like you'll be fine, this is the gap, just stay with these people. Whereas in triathlon, you're completely, in a swim, it's you and you and yourself, and particularly in my case,
all the extra challenges to throw at you. We did put out on Instagram an opportunity for some of your followers to ask some questions. I'm curious to see what your followers had in terms of their curiosities about Jimmy Whelan and what you're getting up to.
A lot of the questions we've already answered. Wait, let me find it. Okay, here we go. All right, we had 50 people ask questions, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Lots about like food.
Food.
I find in general, lots of people ask about nutrition.
Yeah.
And I must say, it was my first half Ironman, so I did
rice. Yeah,
rice. Like 6 months before, only rice.
Only rice. Yeah.
I begin my rice protocol 2 days before.
2 days before.
Just to answer that.
Yeah.
Not 6 months. And what I mean by that is I reduce my fiber intake, and you have to carbo load.
Yeah.
And for me, the only way that my body and my stomach stays happy with a carbo load is with rice. Mm-hmm. And that's reflected on a lot of pro cyclists and also pro triathletes.
Yeah.
Rice. So, yeah.
But nutrition is certainly an individual thing. Some people will happily probably have beans and rice for 2 days out, and there's others who certainly should probably be avoiding it.
Yeah. Or like some people say that they have a really good performance off pizza the night before.
Yeah.
But in my case, no.
Yeah, I find I feel like lethargic and sluggish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if everyone always complains about the carbo load, they feel a bit tired. Yeah, lethargic. But I find if I do it with rice, you don't feel that amazing, but on race day it really works.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was my first half Ironman, and so I had a nutrition plan, but because it was my first one, I didn't really know if it was going to work. I took a few things from my history in road cycling with, like, I knew the amount of gels that I could take per hour on the bike, and how that sits, but I didn't know how that would sit when I started running. So, for example, I had no problems. I had two 750 ml bottles with 100 grams of carbs in each bottle,
Mm-hmm.
and 1,000 milligrams of sodium in each bottle,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite a lot.
Yeah.
And then also 2-3 gels on top of that during the bike.
Were you guessing those numbers, or is this
No,
based
this
on
is accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. No, as in, like, do you, because everyone's e.g. Sodium concentration through their sweat can be variable. So
Yeah.
have you worked out your numbers, or are you guessing it and just hoping that's somewhat ballpark accurate?
Well, I started having to do this myself when I was racing for 2 years as a semi-pro, as cyclist. So I played around with it a bit, and I knew that if I had 2 salt tabs in a bidon per hour, and those salt tabs were more or less 500 milligrams, so 1,000, I was always pretty good, like no cramping or anything.
Okay.
And so I applied this again. I haven't had a sweat test.
Yeah.
I do know they're very accurate, but for example, if I go to Barcelona for 6 weeks and train in the cold, the way I sweat is different to how I would have been sweating in Australia. So therefore you'd then have to do another test. So it's not consistent. So you might do a sweat test in the middle of the Melbourne winter, and you'll be sweating very differently in December.
Yeah.
So that's where it can get a bit complicated.
Yeah.
And then your calculations might not actually be correct.
Yeah.
But they can be, like, if you do a sweat test at the start of the summer, it's going to be pretty consistent for that.
And you can get that testing done at Matt's Performance if you want, our partners over there. And
Is what I said true? I think.
Yes, but if you want more clarification, one, you can check out the last episode with Nick, and you can also ask Nick at Matt's Performance, and he'll be able to help clarify that as well.
Okay, Nick can tell me whether I'm wrong or right there.
We'll send you over to Nick, and he'll certainly help you out and make sure you're fully dialed in. But it seems so far that it's certainly working out. But when you're obviously going to be racing at different races throughout the globe, some races you might be racing at, Kona or somewhere that's really cold, and it's certainly going to be different in terms of what your nutrition requirements are. Yeah,
like I really like racing in the heat, so I kind of wish that the start was at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Just not purely from the point that I don't do more power in the heat, but just I know other athletes struggle in the heat.
They will fall away.
And that's what I'm racing against.
Yeah.
But then on the run, back to the nutrition side of things, I really struggled to take the gels. So I only took the aid station, electrolyte and Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's just, maybe, I don't know. But it was my first time, so my body was probably wondering what was going on.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any blow up nutrition wise.
Yeah. What else have you got on the questions from the followers?
This is a good one. Why was your T1 so long?
How long was it?
It was, so the fastest man was Yalagains.
Yeah.
And I think he did it in 2 minutes, like low.
Yeah, low twos, yeah.
Low twos, and I did it in 3:30, 3:40.
Okay.
So I lost a
minute. Give me a head start.
A minute and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want to make it too easy.
Don't make it too easy for him, yeah. What was the answer for that?
I struggled to take my wetsuit off.
Okay.
And I also put socks on.
Yeah.
I'm still a cyclist. White shoes, white socks.
Yeah. Have you got aero socks?
No, I just cotton socks.
Yeah, cotton socks, yeah.
Because I noticed that a lot of people will put the socks on for the run.
Yeah.
So I just did it there.
That's right. One time I actually raced in Yarrawonga with socks on in the swim. Actually,
really,
I don't know if anyone else has actually done that, but socks on in the swim. I came second on that day with one of the fastest runs, including beating Calvin Amos on the run. Not overall, he was the first one. I was second. But yeah,
right.
Worth a try.
Yeah, interesting.
Save yourself that extra minute.
Imagine coming out of the water 8 minutes behind and you're wearing socks too. I would be on all sorts of triathlon meme pages.
Maybe not the traction you want.
This is a good one. How was your cycling power changed from pro cyclist to pro triathlete?
Yeah.
So my efficiency to sit at 300 watts is better. So I'm more which makes sense because that's the aim. That's essentially, I mean, ideally, I'll improve my swim and be able to finish, get out of the water with a pack and be able to do 300 watts, not 350.
Yeah.
So yeah, my aerobic efficiency has gone up, but then I'm also on a TT bike, so that's also difficult to compare on the road bike. But if I do road bike training now, my 20-minute power is probably a bit less, maybe 20 watts less. So when I was a road cyclist, I could do like 440, bit under 450 for 20 minutes. Whereas now it would be like maximum 410 watts, maybe 420.
And when you're a road cyclist, you would have spent 99% of your time on the road bike, and now you're spending, 99% of the time on the TT bike?
Yeah, a lot of the time. If I just have an easy 4 hours, I do find sometimes I opt for the road bike just to give my lower back
Which you rode in today on the TT bike. For those who aren't watching on the YouTube and listen to on Spotify, is even just rode in today in the kit and all.
Yeah. Well, so like part of the recovery that I learned from road cycling was doing nothing is not a good idea.
Yeah.
So having 3 to 4 days completely off, it's good for the head.
Yeah.
But physically, it's not great. So I mean, people will find this crazy, but after the half Ironman, I actually went straight to the pool.
Mm-hmm.
I could have taken a photo and put it on my Instagram and been like, straight back to swim training.
It's well, probably need
people would have found that amusing. It's like, maybe just calm down a little bit for a few days.
But it's actually typically what I did as well when I was racing was swim. Maybe not straight after, but definitely the next day I'd be getting in the water. Would be pretty light set and doing a spin on the bike. And normally my full rest day would be on like a Wednesday or Thursday, a few days after the actual race, to actually then give yourself the chance to recover. But we find with age groupers, they tend to want the day after and just fully deload, and it can make the recovery process just a bit more difficult.
Like by going to, I would like spend a little bit of time in the sauna, did like a very light swim, and that in itself would probably speed the recovery by 2 days.
Sauna is an interesting choice, because I would have thought you're already sort of dehydrated, and then increasing sweat rate a little bit further.
Yeah, but like I would drink a lot of water right before to kind of give like a flush. Basically, like I had a lot of caffeine that day, just trying to get rid of all the toxins.
I got to minimize on the caffeine. But you grew up a lot of years in Europe. You've been drinking a lot of coffee, so
yeah, probably too much.
Is another 1 or 2 questions you want us to roll through?
Yeah. Let's see. This is a good one. Areas for improvement other than training more. I do a lot of, it's in cycling too and running, and like people always say, oh, you just need to train more, which in my case is definitely not true. Like I'm doing 25-hour weeks on average, and I'm like, my riding's good, my running's at a good standard. I've just got to put more of that time into the swim, and more specificity in the intensity.
How are you, like a lot of people think of it around the 80-20 rule, are you polarized with your training? And particularly with your swimming, are you like, I'm going to be all on technique, or are you getting in and doing 100-meter repeats and just trying to get as close to those times as possible? Yep. Like, what is your approach there?
Like classic session would just be like 3 times, say 8 100s, just off like 10 seconds rest.
Yeah.
And at least that way I can kind of see my improvement throughout the weeks.
Yeah.
Or lack of improvement sometimes, because sometimes I was tired and that was hard on the head.
Yeah.
But yeah, like at the moment I'm I don't have a coach, but I don't think that's necessarily the right way to do it right now. But for the moment, while I'm finding my feet in the sport, I do like finding my own routine and love for the sport initially. Now that I've done my first race and I've seen like, okay, I really need to change a few things, I do think I need to get a specific swim coach. So that's something that's going to change. And then also someone just to tell me like, stop running so much.
I guess one of the challenges though will be, because you're having to constantly move, who I'll be able to team up with to help with the swimming when you're not fixed in one location. Yeah,
and also the struggle. Like I have a lot of support and networks here in Australia, in Melbourne. But when I go overseas, I'm kind of left to my own to myself, and I've got to organize everything. And the swim culture in Spain is not a thing.
Okay.
So like when you go to a pool in Spain, it's normally empty.
Might have
There's
to just go across to Germany or something and speak to Jan and see if he can help you out.
Yeah, well, ideally I'd still be living in Girona like I was, because
Yeah.
then you have all the pro triathletes,
Yeah.
and I can make them feel really fast in the pool.
Yeah. You're all about building everyone's confidence.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah. But yeah, I've got to reevaluate my training a little bit. So, but in my case, I'm not going to add more volume. That's for sure. Volume, I don't think is the answer. I know people always think that that's the truth, but in my case, I'm training a lot already.
I think for a lot of people though, it's driven by everyone viewing on the outside, going, "Well, these are impressive numbers. They're doing 30 hours, or they're doing X amount of run mileage, or they're whatever they're doing." If you're seeing someone not doing a lot of volume, they're like, they're not really paying much attention.
Yeah, they're not impressed by it.
Yeah.
And it's probably also not on their algorithm because it's not getting many views.
Yeah.
Because people aren't impressed by it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like part of my transition from pro cycling to pro triathlon was learning about the at-home habits and lifestyle, and also the training of the pros. And luckily, a lot of the pros have YouTube channels, and so you really do get this like insight into how they do things, for the better or the worse for the age grouper, or in my case, me observing. And yeah, often they always put in like their big training day, and you think that they just do that 6 days a week.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's easy to think that, like in my case, I say I do 25 hours, but that's only for 3 weeks of the month.
Yeah.
Maybe I get a little bit tired, and then I have to do 18 hours.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's 2 weeks in a row I'm tired. Yeah.
And it also depends on the athlete. There are athletes who do perform very well off high volume, and there's some athletes who do perform better off lower volume. So it's working out what really works best for you. Is there one last question from one of your followers that you want to chuck in?
What type of run workout gave you an indication of the sort of shape you're in? Shout out to Dan. When I first started running properly in November, I would normally do the same 1K workout every week. So for 12 weeks there, I was more or less doing a very similar 1K, 8x1K with 1 minute's rest.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it eventually came to. But when I first started, it was 4x1K with 2 minutes rest. And I was doing them in the first few weeks at like 305s, 310s. And I kept progressing that session and getting lower rest and faster in the 1K reps.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of nice to see the progression going so quickly. And then eventually I was able to run 18K non-stop at 3 minute Ks, which was a pretty awesome progression in 4 months.
Because you're doing some of your running now with some of the top Australian runners, aren't you?
Yeah, when I was back in Melbourne, I was friends with some of the guys that train with the Melbourne Track Club.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to come into their sessions. And some of their sessions were way too fast.
Yeah.
But there's a few groups, so they all meet at different locations, and there's like the super fast group, and yeah, there's like 3 different levels.
Yeah.
And so normally I'd hop into the second group, and that was perfect because then I have, some elite runners to train with.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. Like training with people is so much easier than doing 1K reps by yourself and trying to pump yourself up.
Yeah. But it's also, I think, more the way that triathletes used to train was they would find runners to run with for their running. They would ride with some cyclists for cycling, and find some swimmers to swim with. Triathletes sort of tend to now either train a lot more solo or train with triathletes. But it's an interesting approach to choose to really train with people who have specialised in that field.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, I'm lucky enough that I'm a strong enough runner to kind of run with them too.
Yeah.
Like if I was a little bit slower, training with these guys would be complete overkill. And I would be so fatigued from, for the whole week.
Yeah.
So actually training with them would be a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Because your run intensity would just go, your ride intensity would go out the window. And then I'd probably have like chronic fatigue after 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's a tricky balance of training by yourself and knowing you need to stay within your zones, but then also having company with other people and enjoying training.
Yeah.
Because also you need to be happy. And I spend a lot of time in Spain training by myself. Like all the riding is by myself. I found a run group in Barcelona, which is amazing. And then I do a lot of my swimming by myself, which is really hard on the head.
Yeah.
A lot of people will know that swimming laps with yourself, and I is not easy.
2 minutes by yourself feels like a day,
Yeah.
and then you could probably spend 2 hours with a group, and it flies by.
Yeah. But I do find with the swimming, like when I am by myself, at first there's some days where I really don't enjoy it, but it's also a really good time to not have headphones in, not having a stimulus, and just trying to go to like everyone always says it, like a meditative state.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get into that state and the swim's great.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And then other times
I get 2 laps in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've actually got rid of the watch.
Yeah.
That helps.
It's a difficult one for triathletes. Get rid of the watch.
I got rid of the watch.
Connect with the water.
Yeah.
Feel the stroke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Become one. Don't fight the water. It's not going to help you.
So when I first started swimming, I bought a pair of the swim headphones, and I had my watch.
Yeah.
And I had my Oura ring on. So I had all the devices.
So you're definitely a triathlete
now. But now I've got rid of all of that, and I'm trying to like feel the water properly and enjoy like the challenge of not like looking at your phone for an hour or having a podcast in.
Yeah. Particularly these days when we're so wide and connected to that technology, to then be in water and just be disconnected. At first, it can feel a bit, fish out of water. Like, where's all my devices? I need to check the screen. But it definitely is good for us to be able to then just get into that meditative state and be one with the water. Yeah. As much as we possibly can, even though we're not swimmers.
In my case, I feel like I'm one with the water when I have a wetsuit on.
Yeah.
I must say that.
Yeah. Is that thanks to a particular wetsuit company, or is that?
Well, yeah. So I'm with De Boer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I actually got a message from them yesterday saying nice swim. Yeah. I thought they would be embarrassed.
I actually swim in the same suit. I've had an issue with my shoulder. I came off my bike in 2012, and I found most suits just aggravated my shoulder, and I basically had to go sleeveless, and I found that it was probably the one suit that didn't actually work against and aggravate my shoulder. So
the Fjord 4.0 or
no, you've got the new one. I got the older one. But
the wetsuit's amazing. Yeah. If I didn't do that, if I wasn't in that wetsuit yesterday, like if I just did it in Speedos, I would not want to know the pace.
That's all right.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. Is there any other shout outs you want to do before we wrap up for today?
Not really.
Not really.
Yeah.
For anyone else that does want to get behind Jimmy and supporting, where can we find you?
I've got a YouTube channel. Can't believe I say that.
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd ever have a YouTube channel, but here we are.
Yeah.
I don't know what the tag is, but if you type in Jimmy Whelan, I guess it'll come up.
And I'll add in those links into to my post as well, and we'll put it on our socials on Instagram. So Kaizen Try for Instagram. What's your Instagram handle? It's
jimmywhelan.jpg.
It's JPEG, is that?
JPEG. I don't know why I chose that, but it's been like that for years, so I've kept it that way.
Fair enough. Jimmy Whelan, thanks for coming on to the Kaizen Show. Until next time, dream big, take action, and enjoy the journey.
Cheers, Macka.